wing, buddy. I was going to tell you just to remain standing. With your foot, I didn't want you to have to keep going up and down. Okay. Yeah. All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Now, good evening. Today is Tuesday, November 26th, 2024 at 5:56 p.m. We're calling this regular meeting of the Wake County Board of Education to order. I want to welcome those of you that are watching at home and those of you that are here in person. Our County Board of Education meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the official business of the school system. The public is cordially invited to attend board meetings to observe the board as it conducts its official business. Persons who willfully interrupt, disrupt, or cause disturbances to an official meeting may be directed to leave by the presiding officer. Members of the audience should show respect for the speakers by refraining from loud comments or noises or other disruptions. Disruptions by any person or persons of a public meeting will be subject to action in accordance with General Statute 143 through 1817. All right, I note that we do have a quorum, and so those of you that are able, please rise as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll wait just a second, and then the first item on our meeting agenda would be consideration and adoption of our meeting agenda. But I'm aware that we have a quick amendment to make. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to amend the meeting agenda.
Second.
Well, we need to know what the amendment is. Ms. Edmonds?
I'll take this. So I don't have my laptop open, but it's the item I'd like to remove off of consent, the BAC nomination for District 5, and pull that from consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. So there's a motion by Ms. Edmonds to remove from the consent agenda the District 5 board member, the District 5 Board Advisory Council nomination. Ms. Edmonds. Oh, and there's a second by Mr. Swanson. Ms. Edmonds.
Yes, and just for the public and for clarity, this has nothing to do with the person that is nominated. I just need to sign the form, which I had not done. So there's no drama here. It's just I'd like to do it on December 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edmonds. And again, I'll lend my support. This is just a technical amendment to make sure all the I's are literally dotted and all the T's crossed. So the motion was made by Ms. Edmonds, properly seconded by Mr. Swanson. All in favor of amending the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the amendment has been adopted. Now we need to vote for the actual approval of the amended agenda. Is there a motion?
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Hershey and a second from Ms. Mahaffey to adopt the amended meeting agenda. All in favor of the meeting agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the meeting agenda has been adopted, and so we will turn to the first item. Okay, I'm sorry. There is one other issue, but I will bring it up at the appropriate time. We'll go ahead and we'll move into the public comment portion of our meeting. Speakers wishing to present about items on tonight's agenda will be heard before speakers commenting on other topics. All other speakers will be heard in order of sign-up. Only the person speaking at the podium will be able to stand. Again, all attendees that are not speaking are to remain seated. Concerns related to personnel issues or individual student matters that may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel policies, the grievance policies, and others should address those to staff rather than reveal confidential information that might be of a sensitive nature. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, speakers are encouraged to address their comments to the Board of Education and must refrain from personal attacks and insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff, or members of the general public. Please remain at the podium during your speaking time. Any materials you wish to share should be handed to the board attorney, Mr. Rod Malone, here at the end of the table, either before or after your comments. During public comment, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. Please note that the microphones are adjustable. You can go ahead and raise them or lower them to where they're comfortable. Your time does not begin until you start to speak. When you start to speak, the green light will light up to show you that your time has begun. Then you will have 3 minutes. The yellow light will light up along with an audible tone that you'll hear when there are 30 seconds remaining in your time. When your speaking time is up, you'll see you'll see a red light, and you'll hear another audible tone. When your time is up, please end your comments. The next speaker will be called to the podium at that time, and you are asked to respect the time limit and speak no more than 3 minutes. All right? Our first speaker tonight, as we do, we bring all of our students up to speak first. We have 2 student speakers. Our first is Rowan Bilodeau. Good evening.
Good evening, board members. Tonight I'm going to start with a story, and you may think to yourself, why are they telling us this? But I promise there's a point. So, last Wednesday I went to Student Services to use the restroom before second period. That's the counselor's office, if anybody's curious. As I was leaving, a boy walked in and asked the receptionist if she had any string because his belt broke and he needed something to keep his pants up. As I do every day, I was wearing this belt, which I wear even if I don't need it. On that day, the belt was just for show, so I took it off and told him that he could borrow it for the day. He thanked me profusely and promised he'd return it to me. All of the people in Student Services then started praising me and saying that I was so selfless. I replied, I had something that he needed. It was just the right thing to do. It didn't feel like some huge act of service, just common courtesy. The next day, November 20th, which is important, so remember that, I went to Student Services again, and they praised me again. One lady even said it was the kindest thing she'd ever witnessed. I thought to myself, wow, she must know a lot of mean people if that's the nicest thing she'd ever seen. They all told me that I was so generous and thoughtful, and I was really taken aback. Is common decency really so uncommon that such a small act is worthy of such high acclaim? I mean, there's plenty of selfish and hateful people out there, but I always thought kindness prevailed. Throughout the rest of that day, though, I became more cognizant of all the nastiness around me and the severe lack of niceness. Like how in second period, our principal made the announcement that it was International Transgender Day of Remembrance. Nobody in my class was respectful. Some of them even laughed and said it was stupid. I commented that Trans Day of Remembrance is a day set aside to commemorate trans people who have been killed in acts of anti-trans hate. So laughing at that means that you're laughing at the 350-plus people murdered internationally just this year. Nobody took it seriously. I was frustrated, but heartbroken more than anything. Since I was born, a little over 17 years ago, over 5,000 trans people have been murdered globally. That means almost one person a day. Why are we laughing at that? We honor Memorial Day in school every year, and I never hear people laughing. Every year on September 11th, we pay respects to the nearly 3,000 people that died in 2001, and nobody laughs at that either. So why is it acceptable to laugh about this? Why is it okay to call it stupid or goofy? There is one day a year, November 20th, where everyone should pay respects to the trans community. You don't have to be trans or even accept trans people. But if you have even a shred of basic human decency, then you should know that a day of mourning is not the time for your transphobia. Everyone here has a community. I want you to imagine your community. It could be a religion, race, anything, and then imagine that thousands of members of that community were being murdered strictly because they're part of that community. Imagine that there's a day set aside for honoring those lost lives, and then imagine how you would feel on that day. Pretty sorrowful, I'd assume. But how would you feel if, on this sorrowful day, you heard countless people mocking it and discrediting it? That probably wouldn't feel so great, would it? Well, that's how I felt for all of Thursday. I cried so many tears for all of the members of my family who were wrongfully killed. I cried for the 25-year-old woman who was shot and killed just the week before last in Greensboro. I cried for the 16-year-old kid beaten in their school bathroom and who died the next day from sustained injuries. I cried for myself out of fear and dread. I cried for my girlfriend out of devastation that she may be taken from me before we can grow old together. And I cried because everywhere I went, people treated it like a joke. So to answer my question from earlier, yes, common decency is so uncommon that people get so excited at the smallest act of kindness. But why? Where has our decency gone? The world feels ruined, and we all need to be a little bit more decent.
Thank you. Our next speaker is another student, Rejoy Rajesh. Rejoy? Good evening.
Hello, good evening, Chair Haggerty, board members, and Dr. Taylor. My name is Rejoy Rajesh, and I'm an Enloe High School freshman. This is my first time speaking at a school board meeting, so please excuse me if I sound nervous. I'll address the parent-informed passive consent case for the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. The YRBC is a national survey conducted by high school and middle school students by the CDC. It consists of questions about health risk behaviors and takes an accurate snapshot of student well-being. After the survey, the CDC sends the results to the participating states and districts. However, the CDC does not provide weighted data to districts that have below the 60% threshold participation. For the last several administrations, Wake County has been an oversampled district, but has had too little participation for weighted data. The primary reason being the lack of signed parent consent forms returned to the school. Wake County uses active parent consent, which means that parents need to provide signed consent for participation in the survey. Active parent consent is ineffective due to the effort taken by students to return it to school and is mostly ignored. Students aren't allowed to participate without consent. On the contrary, parent-informed passive consent requires parents to sign and return a form only if they do not want their student to participate in the YRBS. Parents are informed that their students will be taking this survey unless they fill out a form opting them out. Wake, Mecklenburg, Durham, Winston-Salem, and Chatham counties are oversampled and would be eligible to receive their local data if they met the 60% threshold. Wake is the only one that is active consent rather than passive consent, and the only one that did not get weighted data. Passive consent is more effective in gathering more data, and parents still get to choose if they don't want their child to take the survey. Why does Wake County need weighted data from the survey? Wake County is unique from the rest of the state, so statewide data is useful for comparison, but not for understanding Wake County students. This survey allows students to express themselves and considers the youth population's opinions on issues affecting them. Student voice is essential in addressing needs. The YRBC is a means to allow student voice. Nelson Mandela once said, "If we are serious about empowering young people, then we must begin by listening to their voices and allowing them to play a role in the decisions that shape their lives." The survey's data can also be used by the school board and many nonprofit organizations like the Poe Center for Health Education to develop and implement effective programs benefiting the youth. We can better understand the issues that are associated with our youth and create effective policies accordingly. Also, local data that accurately represents the population provides an advantage in grant writing over communities and districts that don't have that data. Clearly, you can see that the YRBCS data is crucial in understanding the youth needs. Wake County isn't receiving enough participation from the survey to get accurate data due to active consent, and we can see that parent-informed passive consent should be used instead. These are the reasons why I urge the Wake County School Board to amend the policy to allow the YRBS survey to be parent-informed passive consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajesh. Next, we'll turn to our adult speakers. All speakers tonight are speaking on agenda items. Our first speaker is Margaret Bilodeau. And Margaret will be followed by Christopher English.
Hello. Thank you, board members and superintendent, for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. As we review the budget and amendments, I want to emphasize the significant portion of our funding that comes from the federal government, particularly the large allocation for special education. While we can't predict every potential change coming in the future, we must begin planning for the possibility of reduced or eliminated federal education funding. In addition to financial planning, we need to consider policy updates to ensure access and equity for all students, even if federal mandates for those protections are rolled back. The board, as it stands today, may prioritize these needs. However, again, we don't know what the future will bring, so we must lay the groundwork to safeguard funding and protections for all students, particularly special education students. Looking at the proposed budget, if I'm reading it correctly, because I'm not an accountant and I don't foresee becoming one at any point in the future, if federal funding were lost, the approximately $129 million deficit would far exceed what could be covered by current capital fund rollovers. This underscores the urgency of long-term financial planning and proactive policymaking. Then jumping to another agenda topic tonight, the new Board Advisory Council appointments. I'd like to suggest that the board consider adding an advisory council seat or seats for students in special education, the ECS classrooms, or even outside of the ECS classrooms, just the special education students. While these students share the same schools as their peers, their needs are unique and often overlooked. Underrepresentation at the individual school level frequently compounds at the sub-district as well as further at district-wide levels, leaving their voices unheard in critical decision-making processes. By ensuring the inclusion of special education representation in the advisory council, the board would ensure a more equitable and comprehensive approach to addressing the needs of all students. This addition would be a meaningful step towards fostering inclusivity and understanding within our district. And I'm early this time, so thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great start to the holiday season.
Thank you, Ms. Bilodeau. Our next speaker is Mr. English. Will be followed by Christopher English, followed by Caitlin Trader.
Good evening. So today, you guys, during the working session, you all saw this presentation right at the beginning. And I reviewed it just as you guys were looking at it today. And there are some concerns I have based on the information that was presented here. So this is just the presentation for the enrollment plan for next year. First off, the data here is what dictates how you guys make the enrollment plan. And as you can see, the forecasts from 21 to 22 to 23 jumped up and down. And this is kind of strange also, given the fact that the graphs start off with a rather flat and stagnant growth, then go to a decreased growth, and then the linear growth is not hitting until about 2028. Going to a graph that I took from the Wake County website, it shows that we have had linear growth within the population, within the county since 2010. So how is the data that you guys are making your decisions on accurate and pertinent? So is next year, will the forecast look something like this, with it being higher? Will it be lower? Or more likely it'll look something like this. So the information you're being fed to make the decision, I think it is not accurate. Moving on to this little graphic showing where the ups and downs are in the population. Zooming into the area of Apex where I live, we can see that there are some up arrows, but there's also a lot of down arrows. And then using the weighting that was included on the previous graphic, I calculated that there's about an increase of about 300 students in this area, and then all of these other ones cancel out each other, and then there's a decrease in about 50 students over here. So you get a total of by, was it 2033, so over 9 years of growth, you get that. Then really this graph shows that there's probably going to be a growth in 1 year of about 140 students. And then there's a lot more going on here that basically the current plan that is up for vote tonight is going to get you in a lot of trouble because of the data that it is based on.
Thank you, Mr. English. Our next speaker is Caitlin Trader, who will be followed by Meg Gandolf.
Good evening. I'm
Good
sure you're
evening.
tired of looking at my face. Change cannot be made until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. At tonight's work session, student assignment stated they will be contacting families after the approval tonight, not after the vote, not if the plan is approved, after the approval tonight. The board has never not approved an enrollment plan. Nobody has a perfect record, nobody. So I'm here tonight, along with several other community members, to strongly encourage the board to vote no on this one. There's a first time for everything. This is the one, guys. This is the one to vote no on. We're telling you, our elected officials, to vote no. The public engagement sessions in 2023 did not include Ashley Downs, Pearson Farms, Jordan Point, Woodbury, anyone from Bockham, or Olive Chapel Elementary School, among many others. The public engagement sessions in spring of 2024 did not include any of us either. Student assignment has not been providing you with an accurate representation of public feedback, among other things. We will be sharing all the evidence along with a comprehensive report in the near future, so look out for that. We found out tonight that Bella Casa has 2,800 homes. To split them into only 2 schools is a miracle. It's honestly impressive. They should be split into several, sorry, Bella Casa people, because of their enormous development. They have 3 pools, Why not 3 schools? And respectfully, Ms. Mahaffey, I truly appreciate you clarifying your position. It helped us understand the influence on the Bella Costa decision. But it sounds like you had such a horrible experience with student assignment in the past, so much so that you cried in their office, and then you took your kids out and put them in magnet schools, so I assume to not have to deal with potential reassignments anymore. We don't understand why you haven't been fighting as strongly for us as we have, because you've been here and you've experienced this firsthand. In a previous work session, a board member made a comment to student assignment, and I quote, "I know that as staff, y'all don't like to put new things into the second versions of the plan if they're not in the first version of the plan." And then this past Friday, Mr. Croza confirmed what we had feared, that the public hearing was just for show and that nothing we said nor any documents or evidence would be taken under consideration after October 15th. Nothing after October 15th was responded to or had any impacts on changes made in the enrollment plan. They just doubled down on what they had already stated. I wish I could give you happy news and say this is the last time you'll hear from me, but unfortunately you haven't seen the last of me yet. These last few months have opened my eyes to just how broken this system is. I look forward to learning more, continuing to get involved, and maybe one day even sitting on the board amongst yourselves. At this point in the game, we know that changes will not be made in our favor. It's not about that anymore. It's about the blatant lack of transparency, lawyer lingo, and Policy 4150, which gives student assignment the ability to make whatever decisions they want, and the misrepresentation of student assignment's goals for their enrollment plans. Voting no is the way to go. Please listen to your constituents. We're begging you at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker on the agenda tonight is Meg Gandolf. Good evening, Ms. Gandolf.
Good evening. So I am a Wake County public school educated woman. I graduated from Sanderson High School in 3 years, and Kathy Bohr actually was my principal, so I know her well. Unfortunately, after this experience, I have memorized the fact that Olive Chapel Elementary has been presented as currently being at 144% capacity, with capacity being 856 students. This means that OCE has 1,232 students. Last week, I was looking over September 2023's work session, and I came across the base population and school population documents. I noticed that some of the numbers weren't lining up. The base population is those who live in the geographical lines but don't necessarily go to the school for whatever reason. They might go to a magnet school or transfers, those types of things. And then the school population is who actually is enrolled at the school. At the September 3rd working session, no one noticed that the base population and school population data was presented as the same figures for both data sets. It wasn't until I made a student assignment aware last week, and they made the change actually just yesterday. Susan Pullian said to me in the response in an email about the data discrepancy that please know that there was an uploading error only. The correct data sets were used throughout the planning process, and all information included in the actual presentation to the board throughout this year's planning process is accurate. Because the numbers weren't lining up for OCE, I did an audit of the last 3 years. Of data, and this is what I found. First, I'll say that there appears to be some adjustments that have been made, I assume, for kids who are leaving the school and for kids who are coming into the school. Wake County Public School on their website has that school utilization. The definition is utilization of a school is defined as the student membership divided by the school capacity. So for 2022-2023, I checked Fuller Elementary School and Laurel Park Elementary School, and they both appear to follow the school population data set, which is in line with your definition. The 2024-2025, I checked Apex Elementary and Holly Springs Elementary, both check out to be school population. For the 2025-2026, I checked Bauckham Elementary School and Olive Chapel Elementary School. Similar to past years, Bauckham does check out to be school population. However, Olive Chapel appears to have followed the base population data set and not actually the school population. This means that Olive Chapel capacity percentage was calculated using the wrong data set and thus inflated the outcome. I can provide those numbers for you, but because I'm short on time, I'll just email them to you, but trust me, they are wrong, okay? And not only that, but I just have to say, I would not be surprised if you're told that my math is wrong. I had a Wake County Public School math teacher look at your slides and check my math. I am right. It is wrong, and I can show it to you. If I'm even maybe a slightly correct, you have to vote no.
Thank you, Ms.
It's wrong
Gandolf.
data, guys.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment session tonight. The next item on our agenda is that we have a special information item. We will call up Dr. Janine Perry Campbell, who is going to speak to us about Native American Heritage Month.
Good evening, good afternoon, Chair Haggerty, Vice Chair Johnson Hostler, Superintendent Dr. Taylor, distinguished members of the board. I am Dr. Janine Perry Campbell, Director for Student and Educator Engagement in the Office of Equity Affairs, and it is a pleasure to come before you this evening to share some of the wonderful things that are happening in our schools. As you know, this month we are celebrating American Indian Heritage Month in our district and in all of our schools. In fact, this afternoon we celebrated Native American Heritage Month at our American Indian Education Center. The photos that are being shown are of today's event showcasing our students. Since the early 1990s, Presidents George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joseph Biden have issued annual proclamations which designate November as National American Indian Heritage Month, or since 2009 as National Native American Heritage Month. These proclamations celebrate the contributions of the American Indians and urge the people of the United States to learn more about American Indian cultures. In North Carolina, Governor Roy Cooper issued a proclamation for American Indian Heritage Month as an opportunity to honor and celebrate the history and heritage of the American Indian people in our state. North Carolina is home to 8 state-recognized Indian tribes: the Coharie, the Eastern Band of Cherokee, the Halawa-Saponi, the Lumbee, the Meherrin, the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation, the Saponi, and the Waccamaw-Siouan. In the Wake County Public School System, we have a committee dedicated to overseeing the instruction and recognition of our cultural observances. We work cross-departmentally to provide resources for teachers that supplement curriculum and to showcase the events and special instruction happening in the classroom related to these observances. We have prepared a brief video that shows you how the students at Leesville Road Middle School are using their multimedia production skills and morning broadcast to inform all students in the school about Native American Heritage Month. Thank you very much and enjoy the video.
Well, we do a monthly segment depending on which month it is. So we are recognizing Native Americans this month. And every single day we are having a new Native American representative from different tribes and just different things that they do. And I think yesterday we had Johnny Depp, and we were just talking about his successes and what they're doing for the impact of the Native American community.
Throughout the month of November, we will continue to honor Native American trailblazers like one here at Leesville.
It started off as me and our former president, Ben Murray. We were doing it, and it was just like a shorter segment, and we would just say the announcements, some birthdays, what we would usually do, because before we didn't have like a whole setup and everything and a TV and a Promethean board in here. It was just down in the office and you'd read out the announcements on the intercom. But we wanted something more inclusive, so we started the morning news so that they could see the students that were speaking, and we started doing a national day, so it seemed more exciting and like, I guess inclusive, so that they could have something fun to the start of their day.
Mia Burgess, who is now our president of Student Council, she was vice president last year, the most amazing vice president, and so she had wanted, we started in February, so it was Black History Month, but it was amazing to bring it to film and to have the kids start picking who we were going to do every day. So we started with Black History Month, and then we just continued on from there.
Wilma is the first woman to ever serve as principal chief on Cherokee Nation, breaking barriers and providing that leadership whose nose to gender. She worked tirelessly to improve her community, focusing on education, healthcare, and empowering others. Through her courage and determination, Wilma inspired countless people to believe in themselves and make a difference.
We like to have different types of people, actors, activists, people from the past, tribe leaders, and include all of the Native Americans that can be shown throughout our history. And I feel like people only remember them as the people who got kicked off their land and Pocahontas, and that's really all people know. But this segment and like bringing awareness to having a Native American month is really important because people can understand that there's so much more to them.
From all of us here at WLRMS, we thank you for tuning in to our morning news segment. Have a great day, and remember, you belong.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Perry Campbell, we want to thank you for all of your work on this project with our Indian Education program. We have an Indian Education classroom and center that is located in Garner, and our vice chair representing Garner has been a huge supporter of the program. I just want to ask Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler if she had any comments she'd like to share.
Thank you very much. And as I shared today, again, thank you and all the staff and team who work to ensure that we have this opportunity to experience it. We've done it multiple ways since I've been on the board, both in front of us at our board meeting, but also at the Indian Education Center in Garner. And I'll tell you a little bit why later today. We probably had it there. But it has been my pleasure to support them every year of my tenure on this board. And they've experienced and shared today some of those milestones, being moving from a part-time staff, Miss Gwen, who we still hold near and dear for those of us who know her, and her name was brought up again today. We had a parent who attended WCPSS and worked with Miss Gwen, to now we have Becky, who is full-time, which we are grateful for that. I will say they've always been good at advocating, which may be why I feel akin to them as an advocate, and they certainly had asked the day the superintendent was there to hear those direct asks. I think it was a prelude to the ask that will come. But I will, and I have these to share with you, both the program, which the cover is the artwork by our student that participates, and we have a little ornament for those of us who attended to keep, or a little keepsake to remember the work that they do. The thing that I would recommend all board members, especially if you're not deeply familiar with this program, and I'm sure staff can get you brochures to make sure that you have so that you can share with our community who may or may not know that we run this program in our district, to ensure that all of our Native American students have an opportunity to participate in their families if they're interested. And then lastly, I will certainly say it is always a pleasure. Me and the Watsons, I think, grew up in this district together. They are a family who attend schools in Fuquay in my district. But it's a father who's a drummer and his daughters are hoop dancers. And we realized today when Aspen and I were talking that I've literally known her since before she was 4. So I didn't realize that until she and I were walking out. She's like, I'm almost as tall as you. She was. But again, I say that to say that it is important that, and I promise them that a board member will pick up my love and commitment to their program to ensure that those families know that this is not just a commitment personally for me, but a commitment to our board. And I told them I would say this publicly because they asked that I ensure that someone knows that they feel strongly that the expectation be that they continue the support, because not only should Dr. Taylor know those asks that are coming, but the board should be aware of the ask that they have coming forward to us. And again, I appreciate the families who their parent advisory council, which again, we've been very fortunate that many of them have actually been students at Wake County Public Schools. And then just a reminder that we don't often pat ourselves on the back. I lived in a community that had roughly 30% Native American students, and they did not have Indian education in their schools when my husband taught there. They do now, but I share that to say that there are a little less than 20 programs throughout the state. And so, again, another kudos to Wake County for understanding the need to ensure that our students, as it was shared today, and I think it was actually explained very well, is that our students who are not our majority students do experience walking in two worlds. And this opportunity allows both their education world and their world of their culture and their heritage identity to be aligned. And so this program not only talks about their heritage, but there are camps. There's a statewide organization. And so I think I want to share that with those of you listening here with us today and our board members, that it is much broader than what we've seen put in front of us. And so, again, I share that on behalf of the parents that I said I would share that with today. And again, thank you to the governor and Mr. Richardson for reading the proclamation today at the program.
Thank you, Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda are our board and superintendent comments, and we'll start with our superintendent, Dr. Robert Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to add to the words by Vice Chair Monica Johnson-Hostler that it was absolutely a pleasure to be at the event today at our Indian Education Center. I think it's vitally important that we keep Indian education at the forefront of what we do. We know they've been a vital part of our nation's history for as long as we can all remember. I will also let you know that we're fortunate in Wake County that we do have a program. I've been in 4 different districts, and there was an Indian education program in each district that I was in, and I had the opportunity to be an Indian education coordinator for 8 years. But it also lets me know that most districts don't have this program, and so I think we are very fortunate that we do, and I feel very fortunate as an individual to be in 4 districts that did have the program. And so with that, I'll begin my comments. I'd like to start by congratulating Dr. Stephanie Nelson, school counselor at Garner-Magnon High School, who was named one of 5 national finalists for School Counselor of the Year. Dr. Nelson previously had been named the Wake County School Counselor of the Year and the North Carolina School Counselor of the Year in 2023. She has worked at Garner High School since 2007, and she is highly regarded as a leader both at her school and within the school counseling profession. Dr. Nelson led the intensive effort to get Garner designated as a model school by the American School Counseling Association. She also was instrumental in the school-wide initiative to improve the school's graduation rate. Working with the school's school improvement team, she provided individual counseling and other support to subgroups that were struggling to graduate on time, including Latino young men. Her principal, Matthew Price, sums up Dr. Nelson's impact at Garner this way. Dr. Nelson consistently leads with kindness, even in stressful situations. Her demeanor allows for those around her, students, teachers, and peers within her department, to respond in a similar manner. While Dr. Nelson did not receive the National School Counselor of the Year award as a finalist, she would get to travel to a celebration in Washington, D.C. in January and will participate in a series of virtual events during National School Counseling Week in February. As we are all keenly aware, our school counselors and other student support personnel play a critical role in helping students overcome challenges to go on to succeed inside and outside of the classroom. So we are fortunate in Wake County to have a high caliber professional like Dr. Nelson who are committed to our mission of seeing that every student reaches their full potential. So again, congratulations to Dr. Nelson for representing our district so well, and more importantly for the outstanding work she has done and will continue to do to help her students. Speaking of supporting students, I'm pleased to share the news that our district has been awarded a 5-year, $14.1 million grant to expand and enhance our school-based mental health services. So Wake County was one of 23 grant winners and the only awardee from North Carolina. Again, the U.S. Department of Education grant will fund 27 new school positions over the next 5 years, as well as additional training for current school personnel. So we're proud of that. Also, congratulations to the students and staff of Green Level High School, which was named the 2024 ESPN Honor Roll for outstanding commitment to the Special Olympics Unified Champion School program. The aim of Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools is to incorporate Special Olympic sports, leadership, and related activities into a whole school movement for inclusion. So we are proud of the work that they will do there. And I will end my comments with saying that I received an email today that noted that Wake County had 5 or 15 of the top elementary schools in the state and 3 of the 15 top middle schools in the state. So I haven't had an opportunity to go through and review all of that because I did get it today. But I wanted to share that to let everyone know that we are doing outstanding work in Wake County, and these kinds of articles show that work and the work that our schools are doing. So I wanted to share that with the board. And Mr. Chair, that will end my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. So there is a lot to report today. However, because of the time and hour, I am going to try to condense things. I do want to specifically, though, address the comments that Mr. Rajesh had made and let you know it's not on this meeting's agenda But on our next meeting agenda, the very issue you raised was raised by our policy committee chair, Ms. Mahaffey. And in our last policy committee, we specifically addressed these surveys, and our board as a committee put together a recommendation that we should change that same behavioral survey to an opt-in rather than, to an opt-out rather than an opt-in. So we've heard that same issue. Ms. Mahaffey had brought it to the attention, spoke to the board, and at our next meeting, you'll see that on our school board agenda. So thank you for bringing it up, but I just wanted to give you that update. Thank you. All right. Some good news I wanted to share, and I wanted to recap a couple big events, things that we've been involved in. Dr. Janine Perry-Campbell was here earlier. I think she has stepped out. But I wanted to lift up some of the other good work that she's done and also some of the good work this board has done. I'm going to close my comments with just a recap of everything I think we have accomplished in this school board year, because we have done a lot. And I think sometimes when you're in the midst of it, you don't fully appreciate everything that you may have done, all the different issues you've addressed and what you've accomplished. One of the things that we did do that I was going to talk about were our discussion of the food program, and specifically this idea of our angel funds. This was something that I know a lot of board members latched onto, spoke about at the board table and committee, and really took an active interest in promoting. Because of your direct efforts, I'm pleased to announce that our district has just received a grant from the A.J. Fletcher Foundation to provide, I believe, $15,000 into our district angel fund. And that is due to the work that we did to elevate that issue. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention and let you know that these efforts to go out and advocate in the community are heard and can produce results. Dr. Janine Perry-Campbell had also worked with another issue, working with a student who spoke to us before on one of her student equity teams. Some of you might remember Ms. Leah Chaudhry from Enloe High School. Ms. Chaudhry came together working with Dr. Perry-Campbell to bring a grant proposal to us to take student activities like student debate, speech and debate, which are available at some of our high schools but not available at others, and provide funding so that we could have more equity and more opportunity for these activities in districts, in schools in our district which currently don't support those activities. At one time, all of these activities were funded by the district. You know, when I attended Enloe High School, the debate team was started my freshman year, and the district paid for the coaches and their time, their extra duty time. They would pay for the transportation for us to go on the trips. Today, with the resources that we have, these costs now are pretty much borne by the students. The students that want to participate have to pay their own way. And so for students that have funds, they're able to participate in this great student activity. But as you know, we have a lot of students that can't pay for it. And through this work brought to us by a student, working through Dr. Perry-Campbell and the student equity teams, we've now gotten funding to give those opportunities to many more students who could be some of our generations, the next generation's great debaters, but just haven't had the opportunity. So I wanted to specifically call out that great work as well. Members of our school board attended the State School Board Association's annual meeting, and I know it was a very, very productive meeting. We had several work sessions on a number of topics, and I think these will inform a lot of our debate and work going forward. Specifically, I was able to attend sessions that talked about the problems that we've talked about before with our housing costs in Wake County and the difficulty our teachers and staff have in living in the same neighborhoods where they teach and where they work. And so we got to hear some really innovative ideas that I'd like to bring to the board about opportunities for student and staff housing. We also attended a wonderful presentation on AI in schools, and I know Dr. Ng has attended some conferences on this as well, where North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has specific recommendations, not just for how we approach the use of generative AI in our schools, but actual policy considerations, things that we might need to take up, in addition to how we teach about AI in terms of it being a CTE skill, a job skill that students will need and employers are looking for, but also how it relates to bullying and harassment and the potential dangers out there with deep fakes and altered images and what that can mean in the lives of our students, as well as just how students, if they use AI, it should be properly credited and acknowledged. And so these are just, several things about student activities and engagement, the links between proficiency and academic success and attendance, and how we can, how schools have been able to boost attendance through greater student engagement, and how we make those opportunities equitable as well. So there was a lot of great lessons learned, a lot of great information shared. Some of you may have your own sessions that you do wish to talk about and bring up. I won't go into too much more on it, but I do encourage us, especially as we go into our board retreat coming up, to share some of those lessons learned, some of those ideas that might have been generated, and how we can use those experiences in the coming year. Finally, I did want to just take a brief opportunity to recap this past year that you have served on the school board. This will be the last meeting that we have before our swearing-in ceremonies and our leadership meetings. But you've done a lot, and I know sometimes that doesn't always come out. We began the year with a lot of work talking about mentoring and tutoring programs, and we had presentations, and we worked to learn more and to promote like the HELPS program, to do more to try to bring adults into schools. We reached out to our fraternities and sororities with the Divine Nine about opportunities where they could become more involved. And we saw, Ms. Rice and I, particularly at Combs Elementary, just the direct impact that tutoring had on the academic success of those young men and women. In terms of student safety, we have now ensured that we will have naloxone in every school in Wake County, and we will have staff trained to administer it. The potential to save lives. We adopted gun safety resolutions and worked with law enforcement partners to promote safe storage of firearms. We have made important facilities upgrades and come up with a plan to adopt many more physical changes to our buildings to make them more secure for students. We entered into the social media class action suit litigation to help protect our students' social and emotional well-being, and have strengthened our policies for our student mental wellness plans. The budget this year, for those of you, that have come in just last year, the contrast between this year and the previous year. But for those of us that have been around longer, I have to say this budget that we adopted probably had more direct board involvement than any budget in recent memory for WCPSS, and that you all worked hard researching and advocating your positions, and we found a way to fund important staff compensation improvements, to bring bus driver pay to $20 an hour, and avoid compression for those veteran drivers. We even found a way to keep the building subs. And a lot of that was due to your hard work, your research, and your advocacy, and not being, simply just not being satisfied with the status quo. And that's something that this board, this collection of individuals did that I think is amazing and should be commended. We had incredible policies this year. After years of work, we finally adopted a sustainability policy. After years of work, we finally adopted the Crown Act policy. We have additional policies on employee leave and the modernization of much more work. And there's much more work that still needs to get done, but we've made good starts. We've had good conversations on bullying and harassment and where we could go in some of those areas. The process, we've done more with our new superintendent to engage the community and really uplift community engagement, creating a new community engagement committee that was chaired by our vice chair, Monica Johnson-Hostler. We had our first community engagement fair, if you remember earlier in the year, that hundreds of people attended and were connected to all sorts of resources that previously were available, but many were not aware of. We've streamlined our processes. We've brought attention to things like school nutrition. We've expanded our participation, found ways in the CEP program to make sure more students do not go hungry throughout the day. I've talked about the angel funds, which we've promoted, and we're seeing the community step up and help us to provide more of those meals. You know, I don't even want to get to know how we talk about the whole transition of the leadership academies and the challenge that was, as well as other challenges we've had with school facility sites and the investments we would make. Academics, the assignment plan, so much has been done in this 1 year. And I hope now that the elections are over and maybe some of you, will have time to exhale and breathe a little bit, you can fully appreciate all of the good work that this board has done. And so just as your chair this year, I wanted to say thank you for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Vice Chair, Monica Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you very much. I will be brief, since thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak directly to our Indian education program. And again, thank you, Dr. Taylor. I can remove congratulating Dr. Nelson also from my list, who, as you noted, was our Counselor of the Year for Wake County and a finalist for the state, and now a finalist again. So again, thank you to Dr. Nelson and all the work that she's done at Garner Magnet Senior High School. I will also note, thank you, Mr. Fresh. Poe Health Center has been amazing in sending young people to advocate for this change. So I am glad to hear that it's finally making it to the policy agenda. So you can take all the credit, not the previous people who've talked to us about it. So it's all on you. When you see it passed, you should come back and celebrate with us. But again, it is always refreshing to have our young people come share their thoughts, experiences, and quite frankly, the request of the board. So thank you and your parent or guardian and support system who's joining you today. You were not nervous at all. You did a great job. Speaking of young people, Ms. Evans joined me this weekend, and it was a surprise. I am a public speaker all the time. I don't generally like to speak in public, so I was not prepared to have someone who actually knew me at the event on Saturday. And then I had to switch my whole speech after the person who went before me. But some of you may not be familiar with NC Child. It's an organization that actually used to be the Covenant for North Carolina Children in the 90s, which is how I got my advocacy start in the state of North Carolina. And so it's always been full circle to watch the work that they're doing. And now the CEO is actually on my BAC. So all these full circle moments are happening, which is a sign of departure for sure for me. But they invited me to come speak to their inaugural statewide youth advocacy council, which I think I got invited because I've spoken about the work that the Wake County Youth Advisory Council did. They are the reason for Wake County to start looking at vaping in schools before it was an issue that we were talking about across the country. I'm going to tell you how long ago it was, and I just was recounting this with the staff. Dr. Chavis was a principal at Fuquay Middle School. That is how long ago this was when the Youth Advisory Council brought this to Wake County Public Schools. So again, for those of you who know, he's been with us here, and he was a principal at Idlo. Very long time ago, they were the first students who began to come speak to Wake County Public Schools around this policy issue. It was amazing to listen to these young people. Of course, we had a Wake County Public School student. There was a superintendent in the room. There was another school board member, a county commissioner, in addition to the students' families and support system. And this board, I will share with you something that has been near and dear to several of our hearts, and several of us have talked about this, but they focused on mental health, and they had two recommendations. One of them is not a part of Wake County Public Schools, but several of the schools I'm familiar with do this as a part of their RAMP program, and that's enrichment courses. And so the young woman who talked about it from her school, who actually bills in enrichment courses, was very profound that a school district is actually building in the work for students to explore who they are, what they want to be when they grow up. Also concrete skills like time management and career development and applying to college. So I thought that was their first goal, and it was interesting because several of the people that I also talked to post-meeting also did not have enrichment courses built into their entire school district for high school students. And then the second effort was a mentoring program, which they did get a lot of questions, but Ms. Edmonds and I both were biting our tongues to not engage with some of the adults who were not giving our young people the space to continue to flesh out this idea. But it was mentorship, that your 11th and 12th graders would be mentors to 9th and 10th graders And there was a lot of questions about going younger, but they had thought through all of their reasons why the focus should be there. We talked about the training they would need, how to screen and interview those students who would be mentors, but their perspective was true. For someone who has a young adult in my home, they're more likely to share with their peers what they are really experiencing before they will even with a trusted adult. And so they had built out this mentorship program. So again, I was very impressed. There were lots of names, but I'm going to tell you because I will never forget. The president was Chase, and Chase had on a suit, and he was waiting outside of the building to welcome us all into the building and shake our hands to give us appreciation and a direct tour to come upstairs in the building. And so, again, I share that to say it's not. They did a great job on building out a program, but more importantly, we were able to watch those students blossom with their experiences. They were sharing around leadership development. It was by far, and I've experienced a lot of youth councils. I run one for my own organization. It is the most diverse council I've ever seen. I mean, for every demographic you can imagine, they had done the work. NC Child had over 100 applicants. And this year, they already have 175 applicants from across the state. And I just applaud that and lift that up for our board to know that, yes, Wake County had a student. Her mother thanked me afterwards because apparently her daughter's very shy and very soft-spoken. But she was there and appreciated having both Ms. Edmonds and I there to support and see. But I take that time to say that our students are doing amazing things, and they are speaking truth to power when adults can't. And I, for one, believe that that is who should guide this board in our decision-making, because we might get caught up in our own values and morals, but the truth is the people that we serve are our young people. And so I encourage us to listen to our young people when they come before us, because they truly are talking to us and telling us what they want, and we should be listening. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask our parliamentarian if he is available for comment at this time.
Sure. Hopefully my coffee kicks in because I'm not going to be on my parliamentarian duties today. That is true. So thank you to the students. And as a former Enloe teacher, there's greatness that always happens at Enloe in all of our schools, but I just had to give a very special plug there as a former teacher. And I'm sure Ms. Rice would appreciate that as a District 4 member. I also want to start by thanking Dr. Janine Perry Campbell and Dr. Crystal Johnston for allowing me to participate in the Teen Summit 2.0 event. Dr. Taylor, I hate that I missed you there. I had to leave a little early, but it was a great event that centered our young folks, primarily our young black men of students, ranging from middle school to high school, to share their experience and give us some nuggets. And so I participated in the barbershop talk, but I didn't cut any hair because I wouldn't want anybody to mess up my hair, so I wouldn't cut anybody else's hair. But it was a great opportunity to really hear from the students. I was joined on that panel by some very distinguished leaders as well to share their perspectives. But it was great hearing the students telling us, guiding us on what they need to see in their schools. And what they want to see in order to feel loved and seen and valued as a student, because those I always say you cannot focus on academics without focus on student needs first. It goes hand in hand. Relationship building is key, and they reminded us that, saying good morning as they walk in this building really boosts the morale of students, and really having those conversations about what's happening to connect with them more versus just focusing on the academics, because they do go hand in hand. Secondly and lastly, I also want to thank Principal Nolan Bryan, who had a town hall conversation about an event that happened across the street from Cary High with parents talking about the needs for school safety and addressing gun violence. But as the conversation went on, I shared in that space, and I'll share here as well, is we as a board do take school safety and violence seriously, and I thank the board for supporting the resolution about school gun safety, because we're doing our part, but we need the community to join us in these efforts. We need you to advocate with us down on Jones Street at the federal level and even the DA's office, because we cannot continue to fall in our echo chambers, and it takes all of us to bring forth real change. And the conversations it was some great suggestions that those families that lifted up, and it also just shows that as a community, there's nothing that we cannot achieve together. And so that concludes my comments, and I wish everyone a happy and safe holidays.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Ms. Caulfield.
Thank you. Some of our board were at the North Carolina School Board Association, the annual conference, where we went into several breakouts, as Chair Haggerty had spoke about, and I look forward to collaborating. I won't cover over some of the stuff that you said, but I look forward to collaborating about what we learned in our upcoming retreat, which is December 17th and 18th. Our board advisory for District 1 is on December 9th. And I just wanted to address, as for the student assignment decision, I know that we'll probably have comments later, but just to not take up too much time then, I don't want families to think that we are not listening or reading all of the emails. A lot of emails have come in, and it's a lot to go through, so if we have not addressed each and every one of them, know that we have read them. We've discussed it, we've shared it with staff, we've discussed it with staff, we've had meetings, we've had some more meetings, we've had conversations, input, and we've listened to all the input. So please know that you have been heard. The documents that we've reviewed in meetings, it's been a very long process, and we have been advocating for possibilities and choices. Student assignment has been giving us a lot of details and scenarios, and we've asked even more and more questions. There's many things to consider, and as a parent who has been in this very position myself, I can appreciate the stability and the grandfather rules is what we used to call it. Stability rules is what they call it now. It really did make a difference for my family, but it was still really challenging and stressful. So I do understand, and I just want families to know that I think everybody on the board has advocated in one way or another how we are listening, and we do understand. But sometimes there are things that are coming in to play. We've even met in my district, we've met with the town to discuss how it does affect the schools. The town is they're taking care of their growth and, what they need to do to accomplish their goals. But we met with them to let them know how it really affects us. We have the state class size. I actually appreciate the class size. I know that it puts strain on us, but I know that teachers love it, and I know that it does good for our children, but it puts strain on us as a district. And we have serious capacity issues. We're growing in leaps and bounds, and it affects our staff, our teachers. It also, when we're considering this, we're allowing for gradual transition for the principals. And that does trickle down to our students, because when we have full capacity, our students and teachers are not getting the time and just everything, supplies, the time, the effort that they need, and it really does affect it. So I know that student achievement has really been trying very hard. Student assignment has been trying really hard to accommodate, and I do believe that they have. And some of the things that we've asked, they have accommodated it and changed things around in the early part of the process. And so I just want you to know that you have been heard, and I don't think anybody here at this table is taking it lightly. We know that we have to go with the growth. We know that we have to accommodate our children, and we're just trying to find the best way that we can do that so that we don't have our kids on the bus for an hour traveling, and, we take consideration with the traffic patterns and everything in there. So I just want you to know you are definitely being heard. Last, I would like to wish everyone a wonderful Thanksgiving and hope that you are surrounded by loved ones and filled with many blessings. And remember to reach out and perhaps include others in your celebration or just simply check in. We often find ourselves rushed during the holidays, but it could be a really challenging time for many, and time slips by us very fast. So sometimes those blessings are just hearing from a friend, a neighbor, or a loved one. So I just want to end with wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Ms. Caulfield. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Rice.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to continue the comments in reference to Dr. Janine Perry Campbell in the Office of Equity Affairs, who was represented as well tonight. I want to echo part of our chairman's comments, but I want to add to them and say that when equity is applied, it works and it saves taxpayers money. So many things that is highlighted tonight, I just felt it was appropriate to say that. I want to invite families to attend our District 4 Board Advisory Council meeting. Our focus is special education services, where families will learn how to navigate the IEP and advocacy process. We're going to do transitions from pre-K to adulthood and family and community connections. So I heard families speak up and out tonight in reference to special education. So know that District 4 is on top of it, and we hear you, and we're going to work connectively together to get it done. I'm excited for families to have a more detailed discussion on our special education population. So please join us this Monday night coming on Monday, December 2nd. At 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Riverbend Middle School. Tonight, our 8 dimensions of wellness focus is financial wellness. The holidays are approaching, and it is possible that our financial wellness will impact our emotional wellness due to limited funding. So here are 2 financial wellness care tips during the upcoming holidays. 1, I want you to plan for low-cost or free holiday celebrations. Encourage simple, meaningful traditions by hosting free or low-cost events such as potlucks, crafting nights, or community caroling. This shifts the focus from material gifts to creating memorable experiences. Provide a guide to low-cost holiday activities, something like free light displays or community festivals that families can enjoy together. So schools can also organize like a holiday swap event where family, staff, and students exchange gently used items like books, toys, or decorations instead of buying new ones. And the second thing I'd like to support you with is promote smart spending habits. So share some tips for budget-friendly holiday planning. You can create a holiday budget and stick to it. I'm working on that myself. Prioritize needs over wants and avoid last-minute shoppings to curb overspending. Highlight community resources offering financial relief, such as food banks, utility assistance program, and holiday gift drives. Introduce a holiday financial wellness change, possibly for even our staff and families, and encourage them to save a small amount weekly, use cash instead of credit cards, and focus on homemade gifts. So these tips are to help you foster financial mindfulness while emphasizing meaningful connections during your holiday seasons so that you can have a positive and productive day.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Coming around the table, we'll go to Mr. Hershey. Hang on, I just got to wait till I'm up there. No. Well, I have no board comments tonight. We have serious stuff to get to, and I'd like to get to that as soon as possible. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hershey. Dr. Ing.
Good evening. On November 18th, we had our BAC meeting at Wakefield Elementary School, and a big thank you to Principal Keach and the Wakefield Elementary PTA for hosting the meeting and taking good care of us. Our guest speaker was Charles Patton, Director of Digital Content and Instruction, and we talked about AI. And, you know, it's a really rapidly advancing technological tool. And it's providing great opportunities for productivity, but at the same time, there's a danger of it being misused. And so what does it mean for our children? You know, because we live in a digital age, so we have an obligation to prepare our children for this, both in its usefulness and in its danger. And just like in the medical field, the ethical debate on the use of AI, especially generative AI, has not caught up to the technological advances. You know, when I was in medical school and residency, you know, we talked about the ethical aspect of medical care, and you know, and it's still going on. And so we have to figure out how that impacts our society. Are we able to harness it for its power, or are we going to be enslaved by it? I mean, we already have issues concerning concerns about use of cell phones and social media, and we need to carry our concerns forward to the issue of the use of AI. On a different note, we had our session today on the final draft of the enrollment plan, and I reviewed a lot of the emails from the many concerned citizens, and I raised some of those questions myself, and I empathize with the frustration that many parents felt regarding the changes, and I do feel that all my questions were addressed, which directly came from the emails. I do appreciate Ms. Pulliam and Mr. Carrozza for their hard work in getting this plan together, and I am comforted by the generous stability transfer that is allowed for the many of the impacted schools. But at the same time, the information from today's public comment from Ms. Gandalf is giving me a lot to think about, so I really appreciated it. Thursday this week is Thanksgiving, and for my family, it's always been a time for extended family to come together and spend time enjoying some good food. When I first came to the United States, I celebrated my first Thanksgiving. I was quite amazed at how big the chickens are here in America. And I grew up in Texas, so I was told that everything was bigger in Texas. And as I grew older, I have learned that Thanksgiving is a time to thank God for his provisions, and no matter what happens, whether it's good or bad, I trust that God will work things out according to his plans. I hope that you all will have a blessed time with your loved ones, and I hope that you have a time to rest and reflect on what has happened this past year. And even if things may not have gone according to plans, I do hope that you can find things that you are grateful for and to be thankful for. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Edmonds.
Thank you. That was a little making a comment about me and my mic. Anyway, I also hope everyone has a great holiday and enjoys time with friends and family, as well as taking some time to rest and find joy, whatever that looks like for you. Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler, I cannot believe that you said that about being surprised with me showing up. But rather, all 9 of us could have shown up, or all 8 of the rest of us could have shown up, and you would have been just as, exceptional as you always are. So you did a great job. That was no surprise to me. And I know that the students and the families really appreciated your comments, so thank you. And the one comment you made about the kids, there were some adults in the room that asked these kids some what we felt like were unfair questions of them, and this great idea and well thought out plan that they have, and these kids answered them with poise and confidence and just thought on their feet and had excellent responses without being defensive or it was really impressive. And so I think we're going to be okay in general, like with these kids as our future leaders, our current and future leaders. So at the last meeting, I expressed my deep concern for our trans students as they were targeted over the course of the 2024 elections, and I said that I was turning that concern into action. But I was vague on what that was because I needed to wait and hear from a specific organization. So tonight I'm excited to share that what that action is. I am working with parents and other elected officials across the state, students and community members to start a statewide chapter of GLSEN. GLSEN has been doing this work for decades, and what I like about them is that they have a very specific focus on the safety and well-being of K-12 youth and ensuring K-12 schools are safe spaces for LGBTQ plus youth. I and a parent of a trans child in our district is meeting with GLSEN next week and to learn our next steps. And in the meantime, I invite anyone who would like to join us to please reach out to me. You can learn more about GLSEN at glsen.org. And I just want to finish with this point, and I'll mention my BAC as well, but with this point, public schools are open to all students, and these are our children, our community's children, our district's children. They are not going away. They're in our schools today. They're going to continue to be in our schools over the next 4 years, and it is our responsibility and our duty to ensure their safety and well-being while they are in our care. I am committed to that, and I know many of you are as well, so let's rise up on their behalf. My District 5 BAC will be on Monday, December 9th at 5:30 at Athens Drive, and we are going to be talking about a potential cell phone policy in Wake County Schools. So they're open to the public, 5:30 Athens Drive, Monday, December 9th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edmonds. And Ms. Mahaffey.
Well, I'm going to save my assignment comments for when we are at the correct portion of the evening. I do want to thank Dylan Matthews from Safe Routes to School and Keith Poston from Wake Ed Partnership for coming to my BAC last Monday, and Mr. Hershey for being my alternate to the delegation for the School Boards Association so that I didn't miss my BAC. A number of schools in my district have gained no transport zones, and so bringing in Safe Routes to School will not fixing the issues with no longer having bus transportation, can provide alternatives, and the most interest was out of the bike program that I know is being piloted at many of our schools in Ms. Rice and Mr. Hershey's district, where younger kids can learn how to ride a bike during PE, and the startup fee is $9,000 for equipment and curriculum. And then Keith Poston, formerly of the Public School Forum, now with Wake Ed Partnership, not only talked about the work that Wake Ed does, but also talked about how school funding is done in North Carolina. And we have a lot of new parents as board advisory reps in my district, and so it was a nice primer to our upcoming budget season.
All right, thank you. And that will conclude our board comments portion of the agenda. I'd neglected earlier when I was entertaining the motion to amend our agenda, there was a second amendment that I needed to entertain as well. And so I'd like to do that at this time. I've been informed that we will not have a panel of student assignment appeals this evening in our closed session as originally planned. And so I would like to entertain a motion to amend the agenda to remove the student assignment appeals, the item about confidential student information protected under General Statute 115C from our agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler, a second from Ms. Caulfield to amend the agenda as so described. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, and I apologize for that oversight earlier. So now on the board agenda, we'll turn to our consent agenda. Board members have had the opportunity to review the published agenda of items that are being submitted for approval by consent. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Chair Haggerty?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we need to restate the fact that it was amended?
The consent agenda?
Earlier, the consent agenda from the...
We should for clarity. Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Sure.
Again, if you remember, we did amend the agenda to remove an item off the consent agenda. It was the removal of the District 5 Board Advisory Council member submitted for nomination.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
We motion from Ms. Mahaffey to adopt the amended consent agenda, and a second from Ms. Edmonds. Any debate? All in favor of adoption of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Now we'll turn to the action agenda item and our primary item of our agenda tonight, the consideration of the 2025-26 WCPSS school enrollment plan. This draft will be presented by Susan Pulliam and or Mr. Glenn Carroza assisting.
Chair Hegarty, Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler, Superintendent Taylor, members of the board, I'm here to present the 25-26 or 2025-26 school enrollment plan. I would first like to begin by expressing my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who played a role in shaping this year's enrollment plan. This has been a complex and collaborative process, and it could not have been completed without the support, insights, and expertise of many individuals and teams. First, I extend my thanks to the Board of Education and our senior leadership team. Your guidance and support have been invaluable as we work to draft, revise, review, and finalize the plan. I would also like to recognize the collaborative contributions of the school choice planning and assignment departments. In particular, my gratitude goes to Rob Sywick in the Geospatial Analytics Office, Kim Lane and Tamani Anderson-Powell in the Magnet Office, Marcella Rory in Long Range Planning, and Betty Parker in Real Estate Services. Your thoughtful reflections, encouragement, and partnership throughout this process have been essential. I extend my gratitude to Dave Burnett and Elizabeth Sharp from Facilities Design and Construction. Their collaboration ensured that we had the most accurate and up-to-date information needed to align our planning efforts with school readiness milestones. Special thanks goes to our colleagues in transportation, Bob Sneidmiller, Bonnie Sluter, and Joy Milan, for their collaboration in refining recommendations aimed at improving transportation efficiency, as well as to Sandy Honeycutt and Carrie Fuller in Technology Services for ensuring our student information systems are ready to support implementation. The Geospatial Analytics team, Ryan, Sadie, Judy, and Molly, deserve recognition for their incredible work in organizing and visualizing our data, as well as developing user-friendly tools to help our families better understand the plan. I also thank Mike Miller with Numerics LLC for his work in developing and running models and scenarios. His experience supporting the district provides a wealth of knowledge that guides the most technical aspects of this complex process. I would be remiss if I didn't thank our area superintendents, especially John Enns and Ashley Thompson, as they support the regions most directly impacted by the opening of new schools. Their insight, guidance, and unwavering support throughout the planning process ensured that we thoughtfully considered the implications for both current and new schools, including staffing needs and overall school operations. Their leadership has been instrumental in aligning our plans with the unique needs of these communities. This year, we hosted an open house for the first time in several years, bringing together staff from numerous departments to support families. These dedicated team members provided reassurance and vital information as families shared their questions, concerns, and uncertainties about transitioning to a new school under the assignment plan. Their collective efforts ensured families felt heard and equipped with the resources they needed to navigate these changes with greater confidence. I'm personally grateful to my directors, Eric Chansey and Louis Ambrico, along with our entire enrollment and transfer teams, Zulema, Haley, April, Ashley, Jimmy, Carrie, Sandra, Cynthia, and Sarah for their dedication. Your efforts to center the needs of our schools and elevate the voices of our families throughout this process have been unwavering, and their willingness to provide help and support at every turn has been extraordinary. A special acknowledgement goes to Coralie Tornow in the Communications Department. Her invaluable support in brainstorming public engagement strategies and crafting clear, timely messages for families, community members, principals, and internal partners has been instrumental. Coralie's dedication to ensuring transparency and accessibility in our communication efforts has played a crucial role in fostering meaningful dialogue and participation throughout this process. And finally, I want to express my deep appreciation for Assistant Superintendent Carosa and Chief Ellis. Your consistent support and encouragement have enabled my team and me to do our best work. And last, but certainly not least, to our WCPSS families, staff, and community members. Thank you for your honest, thoughtful engagement in this process. Whether through pre-draft discussions or feedback on the published plan, your participation has been instrumental in shaping this final recommendation. Now back to the 2025-26 enrollment plan. With 4 new schools set to open in 25-26 school year, Bowling Road Elementary, Pleasant Plains Elementary, Rex Road Elementary, and Felton Grove High, this year's plan addresses multiple priorities. These include relieving capped and overcrowded schools, optimizing the use of underutilized schools, and continuing our commitment to revisiting historical assignment areas while enhancing transportation efficiency. The plan incorporates base assignment changes and calendar application adjustments to meet these goals, along with generous stability provisions to support impacted families and promote continuity in their school assignments. The development of this year's plan began in earnest in March of 2023. We hosted a series of in-person engagement sessions with families to gain deeper insight into the perspectives of communities projected to be impacted by the opening of new schools, particularly in high-growth areas. These efforts continued in the spring of 2024 with additional sessions designed to refine feedback gathered and provide even greater clarity on the concerns and priorities of these communities. Both rounds of engagement sessions were followed with focus groups or AI-supported interviews to gain a deeper understanding of specific factors that surfaced during these efforts. The planning process advanced with an initial discussion during a board work session on May 7th, 2024, where preliminary insights and considerations were reviewed. A summary of the feedback collected during the spring engagement sessions was shared with the board at a subsequent work session on June 18th. The feedback gathered from these sessions, along with input from the May 7th work session and a district-wide analysis of needs, informed the development of the initial draft of the enrollment plan. The initial draft was reviewed and presented at the September 3rd board work session. After that meeting, staff launched a thought exchange and hosted 4 virtual public information sessions along with an open house to engage our community in sharing thoughts, comments, and questions regarding the recommendations included in the initial draft. A review of feedback received along with revisions to the initial draft was presented at the October 15th board work session. After that meeting, staff launched new thought exchanges and hosted 2 virtual public information sessions to again engage our community in sharing their thoughts, comments, and questions regarding the revised draft, and to further discuss opening Bowling Road Elementary on a year-round calendar. Additionally, the board held a public hearing on November 12th to solicit feedback and capture that feedback from the community regarding the recommendations included in the proposed enrollment plan. The plan was most recently reviewed and presented as a final draft earlier today during the board work session. The total number of students projected to be reassigned is just over 3,500, which is approximately 2% of our current student enrollment. And roughly 48% of those students are eligible for a stability transfer, which does not include their siblings, so it'll be even higher. When given final board approval, the final draft of the plan will be implemented for the 2025-26 school year. Families directly impacted by the approved plan will be contacted as soon as possible with specific instructions regarding the process for requesting a stability transfer. Stability requests from students eligible under the stability rules included in the plan and that are submitted in the designated window will be approved. Such transfers will be valid through the last grade of school, that would be 5th, 8th, or 12th, respectively. Tonight, we request the board's approval of the 2025-26 enrollment plan as presented during the work session held earlier today. Chair Hagerty.
Thank you, Ms. Pulliam. So we had an opportunity during our work session to go through staff-presented comments that had been made about the plan, the staff response to those comments. You also saw the different projections that were made in the plan, an opportunity for some discussion. Is there any discussion for here at the board table on the reassignment plan at this time? All right. We'll start with unless Mr. Swanson has any, or Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler, we'll start with Ms. Caulfield and we'll work our way around the table. Ms. Caulfield.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for all the hard work that you put in there in answering, I know, my 1,000 questions, so I appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind, could you just go over discussing the difference between the ADM and the actual student enrollment for the families to understand?
Certainly. The district will often publish ADM, which is average daily membership, and that is a calculation that averages a student's membership over a particular period of time, and that's what DPI will use for funding purposes. That is much reduced on the order of 1 to 2% from the actual enrollment in the school because it does factor in daily attendance. So we are always planning for enrollment, which would be head count. How many chairs or seats do we need for students? But funding usually comes to us with that ADM calculation.
Thank you. And the other thing I wanted to ask is if you could just kind of briefly go over the details with the stability transfer rules, because we don't normally, I wouldn't say wouldn't normally, but it's not always an exception that we can allow. And in this case, it's extended quite a bit. So could you just describe that for families who are maybe just listening for the first time, and also give any specific dates on how and when they're supposed to do that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So historically and by policy, the only stability transfers that we are required to offer are for the terminal grade, so a student rising into 5th, 8th, or 12th grade. What we've done with this plan based on community feedback and tested a little bit last year with the Woods Creek Elementary opening is to expand that. So at the elementary level, rising 4th and 5th grade students, so we've added a grade level to that, are eligible for stability transfers. In addition, their younger siblings are also eligible for a stability transfer, and different from times past, they would not need to be assigned to the new school once the older one ages out. They would actually get to stay at that current school that their older sibling was at. In addition, aside from stability rules, we talked about this during work session, stability rules are specific till sort of the day the plan gets approved. In future years, if a family has a rising kindergartner that will come in maybe 26, 27, that student would still be eligible under your normal transfer rules to be able to join their older sibling. So there's a way for a family to have continuity at that one campus if they'd like. At the middle school level, we don't have any new middle schools opening, so we'll talk about those in just a moment. At the high school level, we do have the new Felton Grove High School opening. They open with just 9th and 10th grade. So all of those students will initially be assigned to the new school. However, any of those students that have a rising 11th or 12th grade student who would be, of course, remaining at their current high school, they would be eligible for a stability transfer. And again, as an extension, not just for the 1 or 2 years that their older sibling is there, but through the 12th grade if that's what they would prefer. And then, of course, those rising 9th grade siblings in the future could join them at that same campus if there's enough of them to warrant that type of connection. For any other recommendation in this year's plan, again, a departure, normally we would apply the same types of stability rules for an existing school to an existing school reassignment. Normally, we would still just do the 5th grade, the 8th grade, the 12th grade. We're going beyond that and saying at all grades. So any student who's currently attending one of the schools that is impacted would be eligible, rising 1st through 5th grade, rising 7th or 8th grade, or rising 10th through 12th grade, would be eligible for a stability transfer. And again, those incoming siblings would also be eligible. And so those are all vastly more generous than historically we've done as a district.
Thank you, and I appreciate
the timeline. December 4th is when we're targeting opening it up, depending on the conversation here today. We're technically ready to go for December 4th to the 18th, barring any surprises.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just wanted to address it. We did have that concern about, because some of the families came to us and said that they could walk to school and it was very proximate. So allowing them that stability allows them, if they still want to either walk to school or carpool, that could accommodate that family and it could be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rice, do you have any comment or question?
I just want to say thank you all for your hard work. I definitely want to say thank you to the families that were very involved. Their input was heard and received. These are not easy decisions. I've been in the district. My oldest child is 30 years old, so I've raised 3 Wake County Public School graduates and a current one there, still in school right now. So I have been a part of these assignment plans for a very, very long time. Some has affected my children over time, and it's different when you sit in these seats, but I do hear and see what families are going through. We have these projections for a reason, that we collaborate with the county to determine what we're going to do. If I don't know anything else about wellness, change is not always easy. Even positive change is not always easy to do. And so I just want to thank the staff for all the work that they've done, what they've heard from us as a board, and taking consideration to change and listen and to bring clarity and understanding to areas we may not know best, so that we can make the best decision possible. So I just really wanted to give a comment and just say thank you. And I know it's not easy to hear everyone's opinion, right? I listen to a lot of opinions in my professional world, but I still have to be the one who makes the decision for a family. And so you're listening to quite a few opinions, and we know it's not easy. And we just want to say thank you to families as well as staff.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Mr. Hershey?
As I emailed you now over an hour ago, would you like to just kind of address the Olive Chapel numbers and how that you come up with those numbers? Thank you.
So one point of clarification, the base population and school population reports that were attached on September 3rd was brought to our attention. The day I found out was the day that we made the correction, so we do appreciate the community for keeping us honest and auditing us in that way. I can say that, as I mentioned in the email, and it was quoted, it was an uploading error only. All the data sets that were used to inform the plan were accurate. The other thing is that those are population reports for this current school year, which is the current attendance for this school year. So there's a different set of numbers that are used to project into 25-26. In addition, one thing that I feel like we've explained, but maybe not clearly, and obviously we don't talk about these reports a whole lot, is that when we make the projections for the enrollment plan itself, we do look at the fact that certain schools, like Olive Chapel, are capping a number of students out to a different school that actually properly, dutifully live in the base attendance area for Olive Chapel. And so that is included in those projection totals, which is why the numbers seem much higher than what's actually attending the school today, because the cap prevents us from letting all of them attend, because the cap stops us at a particular number, and then they have to start overflowing, so that you can get a sense of the real impact of how many students are actually assigned to this school. And so that could be where the discrepancy is, because it's a projected number, it's a number looking future to the forward year, and it's a number that looks at the overall impact of the crowding of the school because of the overflow situation.
Thank you. I think that's excellent clarity, and I think in the future we should repeat that one specifically because it can get lost really
Absolutely.
quickly.
And we'll work on some more explainers to put in the documents.
But I appreciate all the work that you all have done. We have to approve some form of a student reassignment plan, so I know some of the language is we have to fill up schools, the new schools, so I know when you said when you approve a plan, we can't not approve a plan at some point. So I just wanted to clarify that in case anyone had any questions about that. But I appreciate all the hard work and the feedback, and a lot of us asked a lot of questions that people don't see. I certainly was very engaged in this, and staff was always quick to respond with everything we asked, and often we were asking questions on behalf of the community. So those are my comments on this, and ready to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hershey. Dr. Ng, did you have any comment?
Yes, thank you so much for answering a lot of our questions, and that was the same question I had regarding Olive Chapel. And just to clarify, in the statistics, the percentages that you estimate of utilization before and after the moves for any particular school, that's already taking into account any kind of ins and outs of all the kind of various factors of different schools that that are being affected at the same time, right?
As we discussed during work session, it really takes into account, I don't want to use the term worst case scenario because that's not the right phrasing, but if everyone moves and everyone takes the assignment in year one, so you can see what it could look like should everybody take their new changes and assignments. We know with the generous stability rules, there's going to be some adjustments there. So in reality, what we'll see on the ground will probably look a little bit different from what you're seeing on those projected slides, but it's to give you a scope, a perspective of the magnitude of the recommended changes.
Thank you, Dr. Ng. Ms. Evans?
Yes, I just want to acknowledge that, to Ms. Rice's point, Ms. Caulfield made it too, these are not easy decisions, and I appreciate, the thousands of hours that staff has invested in all these many months, as well as the thousands of hours that the community has clearly invested all of these months. That's very evident, and we read it all, whether or not we respond to every email. And for me personally, I feel it is only appropriate to yield to the board member of the particular district, whatever the move is. And so I also want to lift up Ms. Mahaffey. While I was not present with her in every conversation that she had, whether it was with staff or a community member, I know that she did the work. I know that she's got the experience, as her district has been impacted even before you were in that role. District 8 has been impacted for a long, long time because the growth is so saturated in that area. So I lift all of you up and acknowledge your time, your effort, your energy that's been put before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. Mahaffey?
It's 8 years is a long time, but it doesn't make this process any easier because I'm not much of a crier. I am more so now than I used to be, but I remember that emotion, and I remember that feeling that I had when I thought there was an easy fix to an issue I had that was assignment related and didn't work out the way that I had expected. And I remember that emotion. And I know that I could never conjure that. That's a hard emotion to conjure unless you're in it. And I want to acknowledge that that's the emotion that many of our families have felt in this room and beyond this room. Advocating at this level is lifting up those voices, making sure we're reading talking points. I think Ms. Pulliam and I were talking 2 to 3 times a week, in person, on Google Meet, on the phone, in order to look, what is this particular neighborhood looking for? How would that impact the broader district? And those two things are often in conflict. My kids being in magnet schools were mentioned. That was a decision that I made as a board member, remembering that emotion that I felt and not wanting that to cloud my judgment when it came to these decisions. That was part of the reason. There were other reasons, but that was a big part of it. And, put them in a magnet school that was brand new that year and under-enrolled, but that was a decision that I was able to make. And no, we have not been impacted by reassignment since, but that's part of the magnet school piece. But my reason for doing that was partially so I wouldn't be in those personal feelings while having this go on. For folks that are assigned to a new school, whether brand new or new to them, building new relationships and expanding your community is going to be a big part of what you'll have to do going forward. And that'll be hard because that involves saying goodbye in some ways to the community that you exist in. For those who are able to stay through stability rules, it's maybe figuring out the carpool schedule and who's going to be able to get which kid on what day, and relying on neighbors that are also staying or other friends in that community. And that can also be a change. There have been so many changes to this process in my 8 years on the board, and Ms. Johnson-Hostler can back me up on this. It used to be that this was just shared at a board meeting, and then families were notified after the board. Families would provide input on the back end, not on the front end. And that doesn't mean that these changes aren't important. Facilities utilization numbers used to be a little more flexible, and now they're standard. But that doesn't make this process any easier for families. And at the end of this decision, depending on what's approved, families will have to make a choice as early as next week. And for some, it's exciting, and for others, it's awful. And part of that choice is figuring out what's the better, and maybe the better term is what is the least worst choice for your family. And I think that's the part that doesn't make this any easier. And, the changes that we've made to this process have been based on feedback from families in previous years. Being able to see the community pieces is very, very important. And again, I just want to thank everyone that's been involved in this process, whether you came to an early planning meeting on the front end, whether you got involved later. Sometimes it's hard to know things are happening until it's happening. And so I do have one question for Ms. Pulliam, because this one has come up a lot in my emails. If a child, let's say they're not in 4th or 5th grade and they have no older siblings, has an issue, whether it be a medical issue or an IEP or another hardship, what is the process for families to apply to remain at their currently assigned school?
So if a family's not immediately eligible under the stability transfer rules, they wouldn't get the special invitation to participate now in that sort of December 4th time period. But the regular transfer window is open to all families in the district regardless. So we would encourage those families to consider looking at the March 3rd to, I believe it's the 14th time period to put in that type of a request, or look at all of our wonderful magnet schools and see if any of those might help solve any of the challenges or issues that they're dealing with, because that application is already open and will stay open through the end of January. What I will say is that first, as a staff member of the district, all of our schools are ready and poised to welcome and support all students. So I would hope that families would first reach out to their new school and see what that comfort level is, and that's just a plug for please reach out to your schools first. But if it is truly a unique and individual hardship concern, it would go through that transfer process. I will say, based on your guidance as a board, because they're asking for something that goes against the stability transfer rules or against the brand new assignment plan, staff would most likely have to deny the request just because that's consistent with policy, but those families would absolutely be eligible to appeal those decisions to the board for your consideration.
And then
there might be one or two where we could have leeway within policy to approve them, but I would say let's be prepared.
And then I know I had asked this previously in the other room, but wanted to kind of rephrase it just to make sure that we had anticipated back in March that Parkside Middle School would be opening. That is no longer the case. It's now going to be a high school. And so we didn't see any middle school changes specifically for the group that is moving into Bauckham Elementary from Olive Chapel and Salem. And so putting in a calendar application for those families to go to Apex Middle, can you talk about the reasoning of not just switching the base assignment to Apex Middle and what families may anticipate in the future?
We knew when making this set of elementary recommendations that middle school recommendations would need to come shortly after, but at the time we were under the plan that Parkside Middle would open in 26-27. While it's not proximate to this area, it would have created a domino or cascading effect. So we didn't want to get ahead of that, and we wanted to wait to do any middle school adjustments in the 26-27 school year. Now that Parkside's been indefinitely delayed, we will still come back and bring you recommendations next year to stabilize this area. As you can recall, there's some capped middle schools in this area and other cohort continuity and calendar alignment concerns. So for now, to make sure that families immediately have that ability to use either year-round or traditional, the amendment that we made to the recommendations was that that Apex Middle be identified as a traditional calendar option for the families that didn't already see it. Several already did, and like the Salem portion. And so that way, if they put in that request, they'll do it in March. If they'll put that request in, they've got the Bauckham, and they're asking for Apex Middle for calendar alignment. We've even put it on the website. We will approve those transfers. However, if the families choose to use the stability option at Olive Chapel, then they'll already have Lufkin as their base at this time to have that K8 calendar alignment. So we feel like this provides continuity for either choice that a family might make.
And then is that a part of the updated communications for families in those areas to let them know when that middle school piece will be coming if they choose to apply to Apex Middle?
We can certainly make sure we do that. We'll do it in one of two ways. First, it's already on the website, so anybody who's accessing that information, which I know some people do, and not everyone goes there on their own. The other is we're giving a lot of information to our principals and their toolkit because we find that they're getting a hold of the families much easier than we are. So we'll make sure it's being provided in multiple formats, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Are there any other comments or questions regarding the 25-26, the proposed 25-26 school enrollment plan? All right, if not, I would entertain a motion at this time. Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and as I've noted, so staff is not surprised. You know this. I'm not a fan of surprising you while you're standing in front of us. The Student Assignment Plan has multiple recommendations in it, and so our both our attorney and our parliamentarian will have to make sure this is right. But I'd like to remove one of the decision points so that I don't have to vote the entire plan down. So I'd like to remove and make an amendment that the decision for the Bowling Road calendar be traditional and that it be a separate vote. So I'm offering up an amendment to pull out Bowling Road to make it a traditional calendar.
Okay.
If I may.
Before we have any discussion, first we need to see if there's a second to the motion.
Second.
And we do have a motion from Mr. Swanson. Now, in order to proceed with debate on it, I do want to acknowledge staff and how, because sometimes these things cascade in terms of how we'll talk about the motion, and then we will have debate and discussion on it. Ms. Pulliam?
I just wanted to bring to your attention, there are Fuquay Arena Middle recommendations related to that calendar change, so I didn't know if you'd want to broaden the scope to pull both of those items out so that you could discuss them as a unit.
I don't need to, but I can leave it to the board.
Okay.
All right. Is there any discussion or any motion to amend the amendment at this time, or would you rather proceed into discussion? All right.
And then the other cascading point, of course, we've brought it to your attention before, is that any reduction of capacity at this school would impact the region as a whole. So the likelihood that we would have to come back in a year or two, 3 tops, with some additional recommendations because of crowding are very high. The likelihood is very high.
I actually had another recommendation to Mr. Carrozza that I recommend after my departure from the board.
All right. So at this point in time, what I'd like to do is begin discussion on Vice Chair Johnson Hostler's motion. I will yield to the Vice Chair to speak to her motion.
Thank you. And again, my colleagues have said all the gratitude to everyone, including staff who've worked on this. This is a conversation that's not new. It's just happened to be new to my district. So we've been down this road before, and that is my personal intention, but also clearly speaking on behalf of the people who it will directly impact, which are those families that we will be reassigning to Bowling Road, is to not have 2 different calendars on the same campus. Even though they don't have the same name. Most schools have a similar name, elementary and middle, so that is a distinct difference, but they are literally share a parking lot.
Thank you. Further discussion, questions, or debate? Ms. Edmonds?
So I just wanted to support the amendment offered by Ms. Johnson Hostler, and I know you already have a second with Mr. Swanson, but I'm expressing my support of this. And I fully understand, to your point, Ms. Pulliam, what the impact will be with regard to capping, et cetera. I would like to ask Ms. Johnson Hostler, can you please repeat the point you made? I think it was the last work session, not today, but before, about the families that spoke in support of the year-round. I'm going to let you finish that thought. Thank you.
But again, you might not want to count on my memory. And again, and Ms. Pulliam and Mr. Carrozza have heard this because initially the response from staff was, we haven't heard this from families. Well, it's also my due diligence to say to families, I'm glad you called me, but you also need to talk to staff. And particularly, there are 2 things for me. And Ms. Mahaffey and I, again, split a district, which is a significant amount of growth happening there. The majority of my families do not currently attend year-round schools. So actually, not the majority, none of them, because now even our multi-track are now single-track in my district. Banks Road was, that's not mine.
Okay.
I literally do mean my district is traditional in that area.
Willow Spring yours?
It is, but they are back. They were track 4 too. That is my point. Okay. We've switched all of my schools in my district that have ever been multi-track to single track, and then we change it back when needed. That is the expectation in the district, and so I think that's important for 2 reasons. One, it is a conversation that I've had multiple times at the board table about equity and the need for care and child care. And I will constantly say that even if I'm not here. I'll email board members and tell them to remember to say that year-round, whether we like it or not, is a privilege. It requires people to have access to care. So in addition to this being new to that community, and it's on the same campus, which is a whole nother set of parental dynamics, and we know that we have parents in this district who choose to send their kids to schools on multiple calendars. I'm speaking directly to the parents whose kids will be assigned to that school, who have asked distinctly not to be in a year-round school and certainly not to have a year-round and a traditional calendar on the same campus. And so, again, this district is going to experience differences. No one is going to, unfortunately, always get what they want, including those of us who sit at this table. As hard as it may be to believe, this is a painstaking decision, but it is my responsibility for that district specifically to bring this up. And again, I don't know that I would have pulled it if we didn't have precedent set to look at ensuring that campuses share a similar calendar.
Thank you, Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler. Mr. Ng, Dr.
Um, If we were to make it a traditional, what is the projected utilization percentage for that particular school?
So we presented two different options to you over time. One was to just go traditional and leave the footprint the same. The other would be to reduce the size of the base attendance area so we could avoid having to come back to this school and potentially make adjustments. So the second option, as presented at your November 12th meeting, would be that at a capacity of 716 with a reduced attendance area, it would be projected to be 78 and then 79%. Again, assuming everybody goes in year one. I can pass this around if that would be helpful.
Ms. Bloom, could you give us the date? We could probably pull up the materials.
It was
on
the
Sunday.
November 12th presentation.
November 12th.
And thank you, Ms. Pulliam, for being prepared. That's why you don't surprise your staff, so they can be prepared up there. But the other piece that I think that we talked about earlier, which you just alluded to, and that is these families will also have the same stability rules that have been talked about at this table. So we don't know if they'll all come, but I do think that's relevant. And you said it at the end, but I want to point that out too.
As a reminder, with that reduced capacity, Buckhorn Creek would then, instead of being reduced to 89 and 90%, would be increased to 101 and 104 respectively, because we would reduce it by returning some of that attendance area and not reassigning it, I should say. And that was the what if adjusted slides on your November 12th presentation.
Okay, what I'd like to do is, if I could, just give us a pause, so if anyone wants to go and review those materials from the previous work session on the 12th, they can have that fresh in their mind and then ask any questions. So if you want to give us just maybe about 5 minutes just to look at that, if anyone wants to review that before. It's like, do you want to allow an amendment? You're just saying, okay, we want to pull it out so we can talk about it separately. And then we would vote. We are, but it's a separate motion. Okay. We want to,
I do have a question.
before the question, we have a point of parliamentary order that's been brought to us. So in order to keep everything consistent with proper parliamentary procedure, what we need to do is restate Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler's motion, that the motion is whether or not we just extract this one part of the plan for consideration for an up or down vote. So the motion and the second the vote on that is just whether or not we separate the items. And then we would vote on the plan, and then we would vote on that. We were told just now that we needed to restate that by the attorney, so that's what we're doing. So, Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler, would you like to restate the motion?
Sure. The first motion is to remove Bowling Road calendar option from the plan.
And consider it separately?
And consider it separately.
All right. Motion from Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler?
Second.
Second from Mr. Swanson. Okay. I think you all understood that's what we were intending to do, but I've been asked to clarify that. All right. So is there any discussion on the motion to consider this item separate from the plan? All right. All in favor of the motion to separate this item from the overall plan, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we will divide the question, and this item that's been described will be considered separately. All right, so at this point, would you like to discuss this item before the plan? Or do you want to discuss the plan? Okay, so at this point, is there any further discussion on the reassignment plan with the exception of this item that's been extracted? I know we've gone around the table and everyone has spoken on it. Is there any other final comment? All right, so at this point, we will take a vote on the proposed plan minus the section that has been removed as described by Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler. All in favor of the proposed 25-26 enrollment plan with the exception of the one item that has been removed?
I don't think you have a motion.
No, we had a motion.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we had a motion, didn't we?
Not on the,
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. All right, so at this time I'll entertain a motion. Any motion?
so moved that we adopt the assignment plan except for what we've just extracted. Does that work?
Thank you, Ms. Edmonds. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second from Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler. All right. Is there any further debate or discussion on the item? If not, we'll move into an immediate vote on the proposed plan with the exception of the item that's been extracted. All right. All in favor of the proposed plan, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes and the enrollment plan, with the exception of the one item that was removed, has been adopted. So now we'll move into immediate consideration of the item of the element of the plan that has been removed as described by Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler. Is there any further discussion about this section of the plan?
I have a
Ms. Mahaffey.
I have a clarifying question. So at the previous work session, we were given two different scenarios. One, if Bowling Road was converted from multi-track to traditional, and one if part of the base attendance area of Bowling Road was to remain at its current school. And so I would appreciate Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler clarifying which of those two scenarios she is advocating for
I'm not advocating for either. So two things, and that's why I brought up the end around the stability stay. So the parents who are advocating that we keep this a traditional calendar on both campuses mostly have new kiddos or kids who are in middle school now and would be on a traditional calendar. And so for me, the families that want to remain on their traditional calendar can stay with stability rules.
So
Follow up, Ms. Mahaffey.
well, I guess without a clarifying motion, I guess I'm not sure what we're voting on.
Vice Chair Johnson-Hostler?
So we're voting on, so my request is that we vote to keep Bowling Road traditional. Susan answered the question of the two options, which is probably why I wouldn't have voted on the plan first, because the plan doesn't articulate a separate option that she's put on the table. So she gave the two options that we talked about on the 12th, which we have not discussed those options, if Bowling Road is to be traditional. So I think your question might be is which do we prefer? I don't have a preference of which one, but yes, the board would need to decide to instruct staff on which option.
All right, Mr. Hershey. Does staff have an opinion on which option?
No, we just wanted to present to you because there's ramifications either way. So if you were to go with the existing recommended base attendance area, the likelihood that bowling would get full really fast, similar to what we saw with Apex Friendship in South Lakes and Bryan Road, is likely because of the growth in the region, which would mean we may be coming to you with an early cap or potential recommendation that it go multi-track year-round in the future, if those are the triggers that you start to implore. If you were to reduce the base attendance area, that would give it a little bit more runway. It would reduce the impact on Buckhorn immediately. However, Buckhorn has a tremendous amount of growth in its remaining base attendance area, so then that might be the school that would potentially need a solution. So it's just, yeah. And I would just say that if you went with the reduced attendance area, staff would recommend looking at the Fuquay Arena Middle portion because the adjustments there were strictly to make sure that Bowling Road students could go to Fuquay Arena Middle. So we would ask that if you went with the reduced attendance area, you reconsider the attendance area for Fuquay Arena Middle.
Ms. Rice?
I just want to make a comment around, to me, it's similar. We're speculating on what may or may not happen. I brought this up in work session today around my district, and we speculated of what may and may not happen based upon who may feel and how we may grab other students depending on our marketing strategy around filling that school. And so I think that as someone who has spent over 10 years in their district advocating for these families, proving that families believe in what they say by being elected multiple times, that we should continue forward with the traditional calendar and then leave the staff to do the excellent work that they always do with the direction in which we give, to see what that looks like, as well as determining where we go, whether we switch it to a multi-track at a later date or whether it may or may not meet capacity, because again, as we indicated earlier, we don't know until it actually happens. And so I would just like to leave us possibly out of speculation and just wait for raw data to determine what we go from there when that time happens to arrive.
Yeah. And I didn't want to bring this up, but I talked to staff about the thing that we haven't done, which again, it didn't impact my district before, so I will take credit for not considering this before. The board has never discussed what triggers need to be in place, so we're not sitting in this conversation every year. We have been literally reassigning since I've been on this board, and we've not really discussed how to put guardrails on assignment before we start the process every year. And so Mr. Groves and I he and I both knew of a school district in another state who actually has trigger points built into their policy. And I think when I thought of it, we were too far along in the process to start thinking about adding trigger points into the policy, which does give parents much leeway to know when you're going to make calendar changes in a school district when you've put those guardrails in place. And we just have never brought that to our district before. But again, going from a district that was stagnant in growth for a while to exponentially growing, those are things that I wish we would have talked about when I first got on this board, which is putting triggers in place so that board members aren't constantly spinning in community around these, but we're able to go back to community and say, see, we put these guardrails in place, and so now these are the things that we promised we would do, and parents know ahead of time when they're going to do it. And so that was my recommendation to staff, and I'll certainly take credit for just being so brilliant to think about it way too late in this process.
Thank you. Other questions, other comments? Ms. Edmonds?
So all that I'm prepared to do this evening is support Bowling Road Elementary remaining on, or being on a traditional calendar to match the middle school that it shares a campus with. I am not willing to make a change to Buckhorn Creek's assignment into Bowling Road or the middle school change that you mentioned. Having said that, my understanding is how this would play out is that if this is approved tonight to put Bowling Road on a traditional, staff would bring us changes next year for the next assignment plan. Or would that be, so for the 26-27 school year? Is that correct or no?
We would have to see how the projections play out. If the school is able to fill a little bit more slowly and not quite as rapidly as, let's say, an Apex Friendship, we might have a year. If there's any stalling in residential development. So it's just a cautionary that we would probably have to come back at some point and talk about this region at some point in the near future. But I don't think it would be as, well, I'm not even going to say that. I can't tell you how fast it would be.
A follow-up, Mr.
To
Chair?
your point.
Ms. Evans?
Thank you. I didn't articulate that very well. What I meant to say is we would not try to make a change with regard to Buckhorn Creek or any other middle school in 25-26. So it may not be 26-27, but it would be at some future assignment plan. That's my question.
The likelihood is high, yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
But not sooner than?
Dr. Ng?
Unless the cap is needed.
Well,
Yeah, so I agree with Ms. Edmonds. I'm not prepared to make any changes to Buckhorn Creek. And I was in that conversation with Ms. Johnson-Hostler about discussing the guardrails, and I think that it's high time that we do something like that to look at kind of giving everyone the base warning of what could happen if the numbers get to a certain point that we have to automatically think about triggering the changes. Right now, I don't want to make any changes to Buckhorn Creek. That's all I'm going to say.
thank you. Ms. Mahaffey?
I just need clarification. When my colleagues say they don't want to make changes to Buckhorn Creek, does that mean maintain the original proposed base attendance area for Bowling Road as a multi-track and switching it to traditional where it would open at 92% or 90%? Or does that mean leaving a part of the Buckhorn Creek base attendance area? I believe it was just,
Yes, because of the proximity of the other areas, it wouldn't make sense to leave them out. The Buckhorn was the most logical if you were to reduce the base attendance.
and if I remember correctly, that's a set of railroad tracks that was being used as a,
Part of it, yes.
yes, okay. Which would put Buckhorn at 101%, but open Bowling Road at 78%.
Yes.
So I guess I need clarification. When you say no changes to Buckhorn Creek, what does that mean?
So I just wanted, I guess, different people had expressed it differently. I'll let any of them who want to answer it, answer.
My understanding was that some children from Buckhorn Elementary were going to be moved into Bowling Road. And what I'm saying is, I'm not suggesting that we change that. I am only suggesting that Bowling Road be put on a traditional calendar, period. And I'd certainly yield to Ms. Johnson-Hostler if I'm misunderstanding her motion.
You are correct. It is the only motion I've made. It is the conversation that we've had at every board meeting. It was never, so we understand that open at traditional will mean the school is opening at a higher percentage on a traditional track. The conversation, which is why I didn't have an opinion to your perspective, Ms. Mahaffey, is because that was not my perspective. I was only voting to change it, acknowledging what the capacity would be if every student went to that school.
Thank you. That is now more clear.
So for clarification, if you were to look at slide 60 from the presentation during today's work session, it's my understanding your conversations are saying, keep that map, adjust the calendar only. Just, I need
From
super
November 12th,
clarification.
my only request was to change Bowling Road to traditional. No other assignment changes.
Perfect.
So, my comment on this is, I do want to be careful and make sure that we do anticipate possible side effects going along. When I first joined the board, we just opened Parkside Elementary School, and there were many parents that were unhappy about being reassigned to the new school, a lot of claims that it would never fill up. Why are you sending my kid to this half-empty school? And then within 2 years, it was capped. And then we've had to move students and families out of Parkside, which you remember from last year. They were coming, and you have oftentimes the conflict between giving people what they're asking for right now and then having to come back and then move them in a year or 2 years. And then we hear from the families that, well, you move us and you move our neighborhood every year. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that we have to be prepared, if this is what we do, that we can't guarantee that this family and this assignment base won't be required to move again. I also think that, again, it's unfortunate that we have to discuss this as part of the reassignment plan, because I think the bigger problem is one that we know about, which is that there's oftentimes not affordable track out options for families. And that the decision to make a school a year-round school can affect the neighborhoods and the people, the populations living in those neighborhoods very differently. And I think if we see if we see multi-track year-round schools as a tool for managing growth, we really have to find some solutions that can make sure that the families we're asking to go to multi-track year-round schools can get the track-out care that they need for their kids. And I know, talking to providers of track-outs, sometimes it's not very intuitive, right? Because they'll look at a map and say, well, the map shows that the school next to me is traditional, so why would I offer track-out care? But that's just where the school is. That's not where the assignment area is. And oftentimes we might have nodes of kids that are being sent to year-round schools that live right next to a community center that could provide track-out care, but they don't understand the assignment process. So long-term, I think we do need, as a district, to really take that into consideration. The calendar is a tool we employ really for managing growth and utilization of facilities, but we need to look at its impact on those families as well. And then if we are moving forward with keeping this school on a traditional calendar, then it might be the right thing to do tonight, but just be prepared that we will have to look at this area again in the future, maybe the near future, and so we can't necessarily promise stability from future assignment in some of these areas. But I think compelling arguments have been made. Ms. Edmonds?
So I just want to be very clear. I'm not supporting Ms. Johnson-Hostler because I think it's the right thing to do in this moment. I think it makes sense long-term. That doesn't mean it won't have a ripple effect. She will not be here to face the challenges that will, or that ripple effect. That will be something that we will have to deal with, whether it's a cap or the suggestion of converting it to year-round. But in 2 years and 4 years, I don't see myself supporting it going year-round when it shares the campus with a traditional middle school. That makes no sense, and it's not precedent. And so, yes, I am crystal clear for myself that there will be a ripple impact. I'm crystal clear that some of that ripple impact will be negative for some families if we cap super early, or, have to cap and send children to further away schools. But to me, the sharing of the campus and being on the same calendar outweighs those potential hardships, upcoming challenges, however you want to classify them. And I am prepared to defend this vote today based on future projection.
Ms. Mahaffey.
I support Ms. Johnson-Hostler in this change, and this is the conversation that I've had with Ms. Pulliam and Mr. Carrozza. And the reason is it's not just the alignment piece, but we have staff members that put their kids in that school, and then we're asking staff members at either Bowling Road Elementary to have students on year-round, when we, in our own policy, say that we're going to provide calendar alignment for our staff. And so for me, that's why I support this, and, it's why I support when it's the same campus. This is the difficulty that we have. I know, one of our schools has 70 kids in a school where just because of a shared campus situation, and teachers being able to, and staff members being able to put their children in that school. And so it's not as much the same campus, but it's thinking of our staff at those campuses and thinking of that piece. Does it mean that a different school may need to change calendars at some point? Yes, then we're dealing, right? I understand. I just had areas in my district where you're going from a year-round elementary to a traditional middle school. There's areas in the Buckhorn assignment base that still are traditional and then go to year-round for middle school. And so for me, it's that piece and that promise that we have for our staff that I can support this. But I also want to acknowledge that parts of our plan went against this piece, and it's that same shared campus piece, which is what tips me over to this decision.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any other debate?
Thank you. And lastly, I think you brought up a good point, Mr. Haggerty, and thank you for noting that in your comments around the equity piece, and I will continue to lift that up. And we did the due diligence. We looked at the number of track out spaces in Fuquay. They won't exist for those students now. The staff knows that when we talked about converting Fuquay Middle, my top priority is creating affordable track out camps, because if we are going to make year-round schools in my part of the district, then we have to make it feasible and affordable for families. We haven't done that. Those seats don't exist, and this is a case where all of these families actually do live in that district. There are no nodes, there's no driving. Those students all, if you look at the map, all of the schools that we're opening between Ms. Mahaffey and I, they are miles apart, not lots of miles, not long drives. They are in close proximity because there is a lot of growth there. And we have a whole other elementary school that we haven't even talked about yet that is coming online that is also in District 2. So at the end of the day, what we know to be true is not only are the families making an option on Bowling Road today or using stability rules, parts of that district will be looked at that we're not and the reason why we're not talking about them today is because we know that we'll have to talk about them for Hilltop Needmore. So the truth is there is going to be a lot of transition, which is, again, thank you, Dr. Ng, which is why I spent so much time talking about guardrails moving forward, because it is the first time that I'm feeling the pain in the conversations with folks in my district who haven't had it before. And again, my sincere apologies to staff for not thinking about those guardrails before it directly impacted my district.
Mr. Swanson, did you? Oh, okay. Well, before we cut off debate, I just want to double check. Ms. Rice, did you have a final comment?
Right. I just wanted to say that one of the things that I think that's been amazing of what Ms. Johnson-Hostler is leaving as part of a legacy is the community engagement team, right? Which I love a lot. And what I think that we need to do as an innovative board is to recognize where challenges we're facing, and the only way for us to survive as a county is that we work intergovernmental-wise. We have to communicate with our other governments. I think that our staff, Dr. Robinson and Dr. Alfred Keith has been doing an amazing job with communicating with our municipalities. I believe because our students have to be served, their parks and recreations within our municipalities, we need to communicate with and do better. And we have to be the innovative ones to start those conversations and continue to be engaged. And that's what community engagement is all about, making sure that we are innovative and we're education, so we should lead the way. We shouldn't wait for anyone else to lead. We should lead because we have 160,000 people waiting on us to lead in a way that affects their lives so that they will then know how to lead. And so I just want to encourage us as a board to leverage our relationships and have these conversations with intergovernment. And I just want to commend our staff for already doing that in their own ways. But they also need to know that their board supports them so that they can know to do innovative things and bring it back to us so that we can then have a discussion about it to help possibly give them some direction and some support. That's it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rice. So unless there's any other comment, I heard a call for question by Mr. Swanson. We don't have to take a vote on that. All in favor of Vice Chair, no, I was just going to go straight to the motion. All in favor of Vice Chair Johnson Hostler's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes. And that concludes the action agenda for our meeting.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Swanson? Thank you, Ms. Pulliam.
I move that we go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143-318.11A6 and 115C-3 to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318-11, and to consider the confidential student. Nope, we don't have to do that one, correct?
Correct. That was part of the amended agenda.
And to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318.11 due to current litigation, GR by parents, JER, and NR versus WCBOE 24ED 00781 in the Office of Administrative Hearings.
Second.
Well done. So we have a motion from Mr. Swanson, a second from Ms. Mahaffey to go into closed session for the aforementioned reasons. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right. We will recess to move into closed session. Thank you.